Good morning. Welcome to First UU. My name is Era, and my pronouns are she and her. No one told me we were required to reveal our level of craziness, so I am going to skip that this morning. Okay, thank you, Michelle. I'm gonna leave that off. I am a white woman of mid-century vintage with some tall red hair and a gold thrift shop velvet jacket this morning. If this is your first time here, or your third, or your 50th, we welcome you. Let us begin by acknowledging that we are gathered on the traditional territory of the Niukanska people, known sometimes by the name of Osage. The descendants of the people who were forcibly removed from this land make up the Osage Nation. We acknowledge their continued struggle for justice. The chalice lighter in the sanctuary is Sue. The chalice lighting words are A Blessing Called Sanctuary by Jan Richardson. I'm going to try not to cry. You hardly knew how hungry you were to be gathered in, to receive the welcome that invited you to enter entirely. Nothing of you found foreign or strange, nothing of your life that you were asked to leave behind or to carry in silence or in shame. You began to breathe again. You learned to sing. But the deal with this blessing is that it will not leave you alone. It will ask you to leave and become the sanctuary that you have found.
Rise up, O flame, by thy light glowing, show to us beauty, vision, and joy. Rise up, O flame, by thy light glowing, show to us beauty, vision, and joy.
The opening words are by Victoria Safford. When we talk about hospitality here, about radical hospitality that goes to the very root of who we are as a gathered religious community and what we're called to be, we mean that we will welcome not only each person, whoever they are, whatever their gifts, whatever their need, but each person in his or her wholeness, in his or her holiness, a holiness which may, in fact, in any moment, be full of holes and contradictions, full of fear and brokenness and doubts. Come in, we say, not just in the full flower of your thriving, but in your loneliness, confusion, anger, shame, despair, the unfinished, imperfect, holy wholeness of your being. Come in not only with your all apparent accomplishments and strengths, but with those pesky vulnerabilities. These may, in fact, be revelations. They may be glimpses of whatever humanity we share. This house will hold them all, will hold us all. Our song for the month of February, when our theme is living love through the practice of inclusion, is We Would Be One, number 318 in the gray hymnal.
We would be one as now we join in singing our hymn of love to pledge ourselves anew to that high cause of greater understanding of who we are and what in us is true. We would be one in living for each other to show to all a new community. We would be one in building for tomorrow a nobler world than we have known today. We would be one in searching for that meaning which binds our hearts and points us on our way. As one we pledge ourselves to greater service, with love and justice strive to make us free.
Good morning. My name is Lynn Schlunz, and I'm going to be reading the story for all ages. I am a 62-year-old white woman, still wearing pink because it's still the month of love. So as you know, we are now in our 4th week of practicing inclusion. So far, we've looked at people and stories that get left out. Today, we are exploring our theme by talking about parts of ourselves that sometimes get left out. Part of practicing inclusion is remembering to include love and acceptance for ourselves. So with that in mind, I want to tell you a classic tale, the story of the ugly duckling. Once upon a time, in a quiet, sunlit farmyard, a little duckling hatched from an egg that looked different from the others. While the other ducklings had soft yellow feathers and playful chirps, this little one was larger, with gray, awkward feathers that seemed out of place. The other animals in the farmyard teased the little duckling. The other ducks would swim gracefully in the pond, but the little one struggled to paddle, flapping its wings clumsily. All the farm animals would make fun of the duckling. Not very nice. You're not like us. You're not good enough. You're ugly. Feeling unwanted and out of place, the little duckling wandered away from the farmyard, leaving behind the cruel words and harsh looks. The duckling traveled far, hoping to find a place where it belonged, but the world seemed indifferent and cold. Winter came, and the poor duckling found shelter in a quiet frozen pond. But they were cold, lonely, and hungry. All winter long, as the harsh winds blew and the snow covered the earth, the duckling carried on, determined to survive. It did not know yet, but its struggles were shaping something beautiful. When spring finally arrived, the ice melted and the pond began to sparkle again in the warmth of the sun. One day, while gazing at its reflection in the water, the duckling saw something different. The image in the pond was no longer the clumsy gray bird it had once seen. Instead, the duckling saw a magnificent swan with elegant wings. It was then that the duckling realized that it had never been ugly. It had simply been growing, changing, and transforming into something more beautiful than it had ever imagined. It had needed time to bloom into its true self, a being of grace and beauty. As the swan spread its wings and soared above the pond, it understood the most important truth of all. Self-worth does not depend on others' perceptions, but on recognizing and honoring your own unique journey. From that moment on, the swan never doubted its place in the world. It knew that even when it felt lost or out of place, it was always exactly where it needed to be. And it learned to love itself, not because the world saw it as perfect, but because it had the courage to embrace itself fully, flaws, growth, and all. I hope you enjoyed this story. The story reminds us how important it is to love ourselves, even when others may not. Just like the ugly duckling, we may sometimes feel out of place, misunderstood, or unworthy. But we must remember that our value is not determined by others' judgments or the expectations of the world around us. True beauty comes from within, and it unfolds with time and patience. So in the week and days ahead, may all of us, kids and adults alike, hold on to this story as a way of reminding us to love ourselves. It isn't part of the script, but is there RE downstairs? People available downstairs if you want to go play, have fun, learn things.
Thanks, Lynn. This week in UU history, the week of February 23rd, Richard Price was born in Tyneton, Glamorganshire, Wales on February 23rd, 1723. He was trained in theology as well as in mathematics and developed the first actuarial tables. Price was Arian. Am I saying, is that? Okay. Michelle, I'm looking to you for guidance. In his theology, that word makes me nervous, meaning that he believed Jesus was a man, not a supernatural being. An eloquent preacher, he had a distinguished career as minister at Stoke Newington, London. Price was a defender of human rights, including the right of North Americans to self-government rather than British rule. He died in 1791. Offering our gifts to support the work of building inclusive and just communities is one of the many ways that we live into justice and equity together. Some of us have much to give and some have little. And together it is enough. We are enough to work together for a world where every human can live into their best and most authentic self. Remember that your undesignated cash or your check with Donate the Basket or D the B in the memo line will be used to support our social justice housing mission. If you are giving electronically, please note D the B if you wish to contribute to this. If cash is for your pledge, please be sure it is in a clearly marked envelope. If electronic giving is your preferred method, or if you are on Zoom, virtual giving options are available via our website, springfielduu.org. The offertory today is Building a New Way by Martha Sandifer, arranged by John Prescott and performed by the choir.
Good morning. I know you've already said that several times, so you don't have to say it again. I'm Reverend Michelle Scott Huffman. My pronouns are she, her. I'm the minister here at First UU. I am a middle-aged woman with short, spiky, salt and pepper hair, wearing black and maroon today. Yes, I Have a Darkness by Daniel Baylis. Yes, I also have a darkness. It's safe to acknowledge it. In fact, it helps. It helps also not to battle it in the same way you don't declare war on a thunderstorm. Instead, you find a shelter. It rages and then passes. You assess the damage and then move forward. And eventually you see it has less to do with the storm and everything to do with the shelter. In many spiritual traditions and in psychological thought, there's an understanding that to become whole, we must confront and integrate the parts of ourselves that we often try to hide. The parts that make us uncomfortable, the wounds that have not yet healed, the fears we have not yet faced. Carl Jung, founder of analytical psychology, called this the shadow. The unconscious part of ourselves that holds the traits, emotions, and desires we repress or deny. Jung famously said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." This is the heart of our exploration today of living love through the practice of inclusion, welcoming our shadows rather than rejecting them. When we welcome our shadows, we can finally find peace with them, learn from them, and use them to assist in our growth. The growth that allows us, as we talked about last week, to keep showing up, standing up, and speaking up. When we apply the principles of inclusion to our own inner lives, we make space for all the parts of ourselves that we have pushed away, which then allows us to do less pushing away with others. Just as we advocate for communities where every person is welcomed and valued, we must create an internal landscape where every part of who we are is acknowledged and honored. Jung's concept of the shadow reminds us that within each of us, there are disowned aspects, qualities that we have been taught are unacceptable or undesirable. These shadows are not inherently evil or dangerous, but they are often buried deep within us because we fear them or because society has deemed them unworthy. And yet, as Jung also wrote, the shadow is 90% pure gold. In other words, what we hide in our shadows often contains incredible potential for growth, healing, and transformation. This is the beauty of the tools that we can use to help us get at our shadows. I have a couple of favorites. One of them is the Enneagram. The Enneagram helps us understand how to reconnect to our shadow in healthy ways that lead to growth, healing, and transformation. Several years ago, I began my own Enneagram work, and I was distraught, to put it mildly, at the idea that I was a type 3. They say that if you find out you're a type 3 and you're distraught, that's the way that you can know you are actually a 3. Nice sources call this the achiever. I like that. Sources that I like less call it the performer. And sources that I like even less than that call it the chameleon. Ouch. None of those names, though, are actually negative in and of themselves, nor are they positive. They just simply are. And in reality, the same traits that allow me to stand up here and talk to you, and at least some of you be motivated by what I say, are the traits that can take me in the absolute wrong direction. Our gifts and our shadow are two sides of the same coin. Jung's insight that the shadow is 90% pure gold speaks to the hidden wisdom within the parts of ourselves we repress or ignore. Each Enneagram type has a unique shadow, core fears, defense mechanisms, and habitual reactions that, when unexamined, keep us trapped in anxiety and doubt. Yet within these very struggles lies the potential for transformation. When we do the inner work to engage our whole selves, we begin to reclaim the gold in our shadow, our deepest strengths, our compassion, our authentic presence. But when we repress aspects of ourselves, our anger, our grief, our deep desires, they don't disappear. Instead, they manifest in unhealthy ways. Ways like projection onto others, self-sabotage, cycles of shame. Welcoming our shadows means bringing these parts of ourselves into the light, acknowledging them with compassion and learning from them rather than fearing them. This process mirrors the work that we do in building an inclusive world, recognizing and valuing every individual rather than casting people aside because they don't fit a rigid mold. We are living in a time of social, political, and economic upheaval. The systems that we've learned to depend upon are crumbling around us. Institutions and structures that once seemed unshakable are being questioned and in some cases dismantled. Remember checks and balances. Wasn't that fun? To do the important work that is required of us in this moment, to build a more just, inclusive, and compassionate world in a time when there are powerful forces trying to build something else, we must be willing to do deep inner work. This moment will require the best of us, maybe all we have to give. If we do not face our shadows, they will dictate our actions in ways that undermine our highest intentions. Only by integrating our own shadows can we meet the world's challenges with clarity, resilience, and the full force of our love. Now, not all religious traditions have done a good job of encouraging us to welcome our shadow. For those of us who have been immersed in more conservative forms of Christianity, we've been steeped in binary thinking, dualisms like dark versus light, sacred versus secular, spirit versus flesh, and others lead us to constantly seek the end of those spectrums that we think are most desirable, while leaving out everything that is to the other side of that. To be fair to Christianity, there have always been streams of Christian practice that did lean into the complexity of humanity and theology. A few of those include Meister Eckhart, a German mystic who spoke of the divine darkness, emphasizing that God is beyond human concepts of light and dark. He suggested that true spiritual awakening comes not through clinging to external light, but through surrendering into the mystery, even in darkness. St. John of the Cross, a Carmelite mystic best known for his book, The Dark Night of the Soul, which describes a deep, transformative spiritual journey where darkness is not a sign of divine absence, but of deeper union with the divine. Julian of Norwich, a medieval mystic who saw no wrath in God, only love, whose visions reframed suffering and sin as part of the process of divine transformation, rather than simple opposites of goodness. Gregory of Nyssa, a Cappadocian theologian who rejected static categories of light and darkness. In his mystical theology, he suggested that the soul continues moving infinitely into God, finding divine presence in all aspects of human experience, including suffering and struggle. Particularly in Western Christianity, though, and I can say this because I'm a Western Christian, mystics like these have been relegated to the margins. Many pagan and Wiccan traditions, however, incorporate shadow work. The intentional practice of exploring one's darker aspects as a vital part of spiritual growth. In these traditions, the shadow is not something to be cast out or overcome, but embraced. The cycles of the moon, particularly the waning and dark moons, are often seen as times for introspection, for journeying inward, for meeting the parts of ourselves that we might usually avoid. Starhawk, a well-known Wiccan author and activist, speaks of the necessity of shadow integration in her book, The Spiral Dance, emphasizing that transformation happens when we face our fears rather than running from them. She writes, to reclaim the parts of ourselves that have been suppressed is to reclaim our power. The goddess Hecate, often depicted as the guardian of the crossroads, is one of the deities associated with shadow work in pagan traditions. She invites us to step into the unknown, to navigate the liminal spaces where transformation takes place. In honoring Hecate, practitioners of shadow work are reminded that wisdom is often found in the darkness, that fear can be a guide rather than an enemy. Engaging our shadow requires intentional practice. There are many tools available to help us navigate this inner work. I mentioned the Enneagram, where we gain insight into the patterns that keep parts of our shadow hidden and how we can integrate them into our whole selves. Another powerful practice is circles of trust, which you heard mentioned in the announcements. Developed by the Center for Courage and Renewal, these are facilitated gatherings that create a sacred space where participants engage in deep listening and reflection, allowing them to explore their inner landscapes with honesty and care. This brings up questions of how we can best get in touch with the wisdom that is inside us that has been covered by the expectations of others, by the untruth that there are parts of us that are not worthy to be shown. How do we move beyond avoidance and embrace the fullness of who we are? There are several ways I think we get at this. One of them is self-reflection and honest acknowledgement. The first step in shadow work is awareness. We can ask ourselves big questions. What parts of myself do I struggle to accept? What are the emotions that I suppress? And are they different around different people or in different situations? Where do I project my fears and insecurities onto others? Most of us have a special recipient who gets the brunt of our projection, but we're also projecting onto other people. Journaling, meditation, or engaging in deep conversations with trusted friends or mentors can help bring these hidden aspects to the surface. Compassion instead of condemnation is another way of getting at this. When we encounter our shadows, it's so tempting to judge ourselves harshly. But shadow work is not about self-punishment, it's about self-compassion. The parts of ourselves that we have buried often carry wounds that need tending, not rejection. The goal is to approach them with curiosity and care, recognizing that they hold important lessons for us. My wife is kind of brilliant, and she often says to people, I want you to go back and get your inner child and bring them along on this journey and see what needs to be healed and how we can tend to that when we do our inner work. Ritual and symbolic integration. Many spiritual traditions use rituals to create space for shadow work. Lighting a candle in darkness, writing a letter to one's shadow, engaging in guided visualization can be powerful ways of making peace with what we have feared in ourselves. Some practitioners perform a mirror ritual, standing before a mirror in candlelight and speaking to the self with love and acceptance, including the parts that have been hidden away. And my last suggestion is creative expression. Sometimes we just need to engage the other side of our brain. Art, music, poetry, these are ways that we can give voice to our shadows without fear. Creativity allows what is buried to surface in a form that is safe and transformative. As Jung himself suggested, engaging in creative practices can be a way of making the unconscious conscious, giving it form so that no longer lurks in the shadows, but can be seen, understood, and integrated. To welcome our shadows is not to be consumed by them, but to befriend them, to see them as teachers rather than enemies. The integration of shadow does not mean we allow our darker impulses to control us, but that we acknowledge them, listen to them, and learn from them. When we do this, we become whole. Jung reminds us, I must have a dark side also if I am to be whole. Just as we commit to living love through the practice of inclusion by welcoming others, we also commit to welcoming every part of ourselves. Only when we embrace the fullness of our own being can we truly create a world where everyone is seen, everyone is valued, and everyone is loved. So let us now step into the work of welcoming our shadows, not with fear, but with courage. Let us listen to what they may have to teach us. May it be so. Blessed be, and amen. Our interlude today is The Rainbow Connection by Paul Williams and Kenneth Asher, performed by Eva.
Hello, I'm Millie. My pronouns are she and her. I'm a member of the Pastoral Care Circle. I'm an older person. I'm short. I wear glasses. I've got on a pink turtleneck and dark gray jacket and slacks. This February, we are attending to the practice of living love through the practice of inclusion. Verna Myers points out that diversity is being invited to the party. Inclusion is being asked to dance. Close quote. To belong is only the beginning. The true blessing of inclusion is not that you get to come inside the circle. It's that you get to participate in expanding it. As the circle grows, so do we. As a community, we share joys and concerns to keep connected. Slips of paper are available at the greeters table for those in the sanctuary to use for joys and concerns. During the week, you may send your joys and concerns by email to pastoralcare@springfielduu.org or by leaving a voicemail on the church phone 417-883-3922. If you're on Zoom, please use the chat box now for sharing your joys and concerns. All of these joys and concerns will be included in the members' email on Tuesday. We honor each joy or concern with a lighted candle, a symbol of the love we as a community offer for each of these joys and concerns. This morning, Sue will be lighting our candles. And now, as we begin this time of sharing, know that though we are in multiple physical spaces, we are together in beloved community. To begin, we hold in love all of us, those present and those absent. We light a candle for our church community. We have from Holly, I guess it's a concern. My husband has had a hard time during radiation treatments. Treatment will end in 2 weeks, hoping for the best. We light a candle for Holly's concern. From Bonnie, a concern. Mary Roach fell and hurt herself. No broken bones, but sore. We light a candle of concern for Bonnie. From the Cross Lines Food Pantry team, this is a joy. Thank you for your recycled grocery bags and your donated toiletries. We will get them to the pantry. Please keep them coming. Check the chat box. Okay, from Roberta. Due to a COVID diagnosis, there will not be a membership meeting this Tuesday night. It will be rescheduled. I guess that's an announcement. The good news is I've been told not to exercise, but rest until symptom-free. And so we light a candle for Roberta's concern. We honor the complex and heartbreaking struggles of our world. We light a candle for all who are impacted. In closing, for those joys and concerns that remain. Oh, Steve.
Yeah, I'd like to say that the talent show that happened a couple of weeks ago went very well, thanks to Emily Jamrock, Roberta Wheaton, Eva, and Paul. And whoever wasn't there for a good reason, but you missed it.
I wasn't there for a good reason. Okay, Steve had a big joy about the talent show from, I guess that was last week. And it was evidently a great success according to Steve. And if you missed it, too bad for you. Okay, so we light a joy for Steve's joy. May we hold each of these in our hearts and minds. May our community of love ease sorrow and boost celebration. While we are in multiple physical spaces, we still share space together here in intentional community. And now let us join together in 1 minute of shared silence, followed by Spirit of Life.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the scent of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Elizabeth Gilbert writes, the most peaceful people that I know and the most wise people that I know are the ones who have created enough internal space to be able to allow all the parts of themselves to coexist despite the contradictions. So they have room for their creativity. They also have room for their fear. They have room for their dignity. They also have room for their shame. They have room for all the parts of themselves that are glorious and divine and wonderful, and they have room for the parts of themselves that are petty and jealous and ridiculous. Like they create this big, huge auditorium of a landscape inside themselves. They don't kick any parts out because guess what? You can't. The final hymn today is Let It Be a Dance. It's number 311 in the gray hymnal. Feel free to stand if you'd like and sing.
Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Let a dancing song be heard. Play the music, say the words, and fill the sky with sailing birds. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance, let it be a dance. Learn, try to follow, learn to lead. Feel the rhythm, feel the need. To reap the harvest, plant the seed. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Everybody turn and spin. Let your body learn to bend. And like a whale in the wind. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. A child is born, the old must die. A time for joy, a time to cry. Take it as it passes by. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Morning star comes out at night. Without the dark there is no light. If nothing's wrong, then nothing's right. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let the sunshine, let it rain. Share the laughter, share the pain. And round we go again. Let it be a dance.
As Sue dances up here to extinguish our chalice, I want to remind you to stick around, have good conversation, good coffee, and all of that over on that side of the building. We will now extinguish our personal and communal chalices and close with our unison sending words. Our service here is ending. Our service to the world begins anew. Go in peace.